Check, check. All right. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Welcome. If you'd like to begin making your way to your seats, we're going to go ahead and get started here. All right. Well, let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and get started here. It's a few minutes after 6. Want to welcome each of you this evening to the City Council listening session. My name is Matthew Murphy, and I serve as the City Council Outreach Coordinator. It's a new position. I'm responsible for assisting Council with getting meetings like this set up, as well as searching for more opportunities for Council to engage the community. So whether it's a town hall meeting or a neighborhood association meeting or listening session like this, I'm here to assist Council and the community with improved connectivity. So I look forward to working with you guys. There are a lot of people in this room that really care about Charlottesville's past, present, and future. And I feel fortunate that part of my job is going to be to sit down and to really learn from you and begin to strategize on how we can foster a stronger and highly functional working relationship between Council and the community. So again, I welcome each of you. I look forward to working with many of you in the near future. A couple bits of housekeeping if you have not been here before. The restrooms are, if you head to the back and then out that door, they'll be on the left-hand side of the hall. So feel free to utilize those as needed. We also have a microphone set up here in the corner, so to your right up here, and that's set up for those that would like to share publicly. If you do not wish to speak publicly, but you still would like your voice to be heard, I left cards on everyone's seats with some pens, and so you're welcome to complete those cards. There's a gray box on the table out in the hallway. You can put them there. If you want to give them to me, you can do that as well. So lastly, we are live streaming this event, so we've got a few cameras floating around, so if you want to be heard, you're going to have to be on the mic. We've got one microphone up here for Council to share because they're here to listen. And so we figured one mic for them to share might be a good idea. All right. And again, if people are online and they're wanting to leave comments, obviously we're not in a position to respond to those immediately, but we are compiling all the input that we received this evening, both live and online, and we will gather that information and submit that to those that are compiling the after action report for the events of this past weekend. I will say that, of course, we know it's only been a couple of days since last weekend, and it may be difficult to answer some of the questions that we have as a community because there's a lot of information that's still coming in and still being shared, but we are here to listen. And then lastly, and I'll get out of the way and turn it over to Mayor Walker, but we would like to thank Dr. Andrea Douglas and the African American Heritage Center. Thank you for hosting us this evening. Dr. Douglas, this space and your work continue to serve as an inspiration and a source of education and inspiration for those in the community. So thank you again for allowing us to be here. She told me that she's kicking me out at 9 o'clock. So, no, I'm just joking. Anyway, 8? No, well, me. I got to clean up. Yeah, you guys can go home. Okay, so that being said, I will turn it over to Mayor Walker and we'll get started. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming out this evening. Council wanted to make sure that immediately following the weekend, as quickly as we could all get together, that we provided an opportunity for the community to come together and share any thoughts, feelings, concerns they had about this past weekend. We made that commitment without knowing what would take place over the weekend, and I had a Facebook Live on Friday where, I said that the one goal I hope we all could commit to, that everyone was here on Monday morning to continue the work. And that goal was met. And that was with, acknowledgement that in this community we do have a lot of work to do. And to make a commitment to doing that. So this night is about the community. We want you to know that we are here, that we're listening, that we are attempting to, be on a path of correction, and that it will take you informing us of what that correction needs to look like. We acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, and we want you all to know that, we are here. And I appreciate you all coming out, and like Matthew said tonight, we may not have the answers, and we did not assume that we would have the answers when we sat this meeting, but we wanted you all to know that your thoughts, your opinions, your feelings, they mattered, and that we would show up to listen, no matter what they were. So thank you for being here. I want to let you all know that Councilor Signer is out of town, so he will not be here with us tonight. And let's get going. And thank you again. Bye.
Just want to again thank you for coming, and we're here to listen. And if there are any remarks to be had on the part of this council anyway, it will be after I listen to you. So thank you very much for coming.
If you don't mind to start with your name, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is John Mason. I live on 5th Street over there in Fifeville. I didn't prepare anything, and I didn't think I'd be going first, but let me say something that I said on Twitter the other day, which is, imagine how different this weekend would have been if the police had understood that their primary responsibility is to protect the free speech rights of the protesters and to keep them safe. The police did not understand that as their primary responsibility. They came in here with a really antagonistic attitude towards the protesters. They saw them as the enemy. I was out on the streets on Friday, and that was very clear to my eyes. I also wanted to say a word of thanks. I wanted to say thank you to the clergy. I wanted to say thank you to the leaders of the activist organizations. And I wanted to say thank you to the hundreds of activists who kept their cool, who kept disaster from happening. You know, we avoided a disaster despite the overwhelming presence of 1,000 riot cops, not because of it. And lastly, I just want to say I'm an historian, and I understand that the primary purpose of policing in American history has always been to protect the powerful and to punish the weak, to put down dissent and to protect the status quo. I know that. That's American history. But it was really painful to see it played out in front of my eyes on the streets of Charlottesville. So that's it. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Kiburiti, and I am with UVA Student United, and I'm just going to read a statement that was co-wrote by Black Lives Matter, Charlottesville, Showing Up for Racial Justice, Charlottesville, Congregate Seville, and UVA Student United. So we have issued this following statement. This weekend in Charlottesville, we were able to join together in grief, rage, and celebration of resistance. In spite of massive police presence, we showed love for each other and took care of each other with songs, snacks, marches, meals, and small groups of mutual aid, smiles, tears, and heartfelt embrace, and with jail support for the 3 who needed it. Despite attempts by the police to corral and intimidate us, We held space to listen to survivors of physical and emotional trauma of last year's white supremacist attack. We celebrate the collective resilience of our ongoing anti-racist community mobilization. The over-policing of this weekend failed to rectify the damage of last year's police stand-down. The lapse resulted in injuries to dozens, the death of Heather Heyer, and irreplaceable harm to the moral fabric of our city. We have been clear about the necessary steps to begin to rectify the harm, which include full accountability from the University of Virginia for enabling white supremacists to attack students and community members on August 11, 2017. The University of Virginia's meeting with students demand to pay or forgive remaining medical bills for survivors injured on August 11 and 12, 2017. The Commonwealth Attorney not prosecuting black community members for defending themselves against white supremacists who targeted them on August 12, 2017. The Charlottesville Police Department ending racist stop and frisk practices. The city planning that curtails the rising tide of gentrifying real estate development while building urgently needed public housing for very low income people. And Charlottesville must remove the racist Jim Crow monument to the Confederate antebellum slave regime. Together, we have refused to let our community be used as a platform for a white supremacist genocidal agenda. Together, we will continue to challenge the white supremacy inherent to policing and other institutions. We fight white supremacy in all its forms. We fight fascism and for racial justice, and we will win. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Roberta Williamson. I live in the city. I am here tonight, again, I have two things that I'd like to say. The first is that I have offered before, and I am offering again, to privately pay for de-escalation training for our police. Not just to cover events like this past weekend, but to cover events like cops waiting in doorways to jump out at people. I almost want to demand that this become a line item in the next city budget so that the city can tell whether or not it's been done. When I was a member, believe it or not, of the Charlottesville Police Foundation, I did pay for such training, and it did make a big difference. But that was almost 10 years ago, and there's been enormous turnover. The other thing that I want to say is that I was thinking this morning about what would happen if the fascist supporters in Germany decided that this year, 70-something years after the end of World War II, it was time to honor Rommel and all of the wonderful action that he directed in Africa and Europe against the Allies. Because that's the equivalent of those statues that are in the park. They were put up 70 years after the war was over. And I think if we think of it that way, we can get a good grasp of how ridiculous it is. And I feel that it's time to start pushing again harder for those statues to come down, judge decision or not.
Good evening, Tanisha, community activist, City of Charlottesville. While I appreciate the over-policing, I'm just disappointed that we didn't have the same master plan last year. While I appreciate that the police didn't haggle or hassle anybody on the downtown mall, because I'll be the first to admit I was talking cold cash trash, okay, to every single one to let them know, you here this year, but what was you doing last year? And I asked a few of them, was you here last year? Because you're responsible for what happened last year, but this year you want to be here serving and protecting and offering equal protections. I just left Hardy Drive. I seen 3 police cars ride through Hardy Drive. So while I appreciate the over-policing for white Nazis, we need to decrease the over-policing in black neighborhoods. It's not a crime happening all the time in Hardy Drive for them to always be rolling through there. And to see 3 in the little 45-minute segment that I just did for the news, that's ridiculous. They want no calls. Why are you over there? Let those people live. I also want to say that that wasn't the accountability that we asked for. We asked for you guys to apologize. This excludes the newbies. Exclude yourself. We asked y'all to apologize, to rectify the wrongs that you did, and to cut some checks for failing to protect and failing to provide equal protection. Now, everybody else touched on the statue, but I want to look the one in her face that actually voted for it to stay. That's not a monument that deserves to be celebrated. And it shouldn't have took a life or a few lives for you to recognize that and then want to switch your vote and change it to the other side. See, it's always the right time to do the right thing. And sometimes doing the right thing is not the popular choice. You might lose a couple checks, you might lose some funding, but you're doing the right thing for the majority, for people. You've never known second place to get a prize. I know I've never known that, and I've only been on this earth for 36 years, but I know second place don't get a prize. So you need to start making the right decisions. Y'all need to start passing policies that affect people that look like me. You need to start doing more for your community. I went to D.C. Sunday, and one thing about D.C. is every culture have their own space. I just left Hardy Drive. The grass is up to my knees. The grass hasn't even been cut. But y'all voting for West 2nd Street, you voting for the Dairy Project, you voting for everything else, but you refuse to take care of low-income citizens that still pay taxes, that still contribute to your budget spending. And that's a majority of the people in this city that make your budget spend. Whether they're giving pennies, a few dollars, or $100 on the budget, they're still contributing. So include them. Now, I will say, it's 2 officers in here that y'all know that I had an issue with last year's in the review. They've tried to be transparent. I give them that. But being transparent isn't the accountability that we still need. What happened was wrong, and when people do wrong, if I do wrong as a citizen, I'm punished for it. So if you're not going to admit to doing the wrong, you need to compensate for doing that wrong. So that's something y'all need to discuss too, is a reparations package for everybody that suffered from that day. Now, you might already be figuring out something for a few of them. You got to include everybody that was affected. And definitely give some type of land bonds for everything else, but you can't find a land bond to give them better living. Inadequate living contributes to crime, to deepening the poverty level in this city, and it contributes to other things. So if you want to eliminate some of that stuff, you need to uplift those people and stop looking down on them like that statue and Thomas Jefferson looked down on everybody in this city.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Carpenter. I live in the Rose Hill neighborhood section of the city. It seems like there were estimates of about $2 million that was spent on this activity the last 2 days. I just want to share a few names with you. Sage Smith, Amari Hill, Lamia Beard, Noonie Norwood, India Monroe, and Ebony Morgan. These are trans and queer black women that have been either missing or murdered in the state of Virginia, whose killers or whereabouts remain unknown. Wouldn't it have been great if we had 1,000 people out there on the streets hitting those facts and trying to find these women instead of being in our city and harassing mourners? That's what I mean, I was doing a different type of support over those past 2 days, but that's what I was. I was a mourner. When I walked down to 4th and Water to meet my colleagues who were doing the same type of support work, I remembered who was laying on those sidewalks in each doorway as I walked down to 4th and Water. I remember the yellow tennis shoe that went in a high arc, slowly, once that thud of that, and to see riot police, 2 Bearcats with snipers. Their guns were not necessarily, well, they were pointed at some point, but they did rely, pointed at us mourners, the people in the front lines who were hit, who were struck, who still suffer physically and mentally, who still have bills that are not paid out of these funds that were collected for them. And to see those men and those women doing that to people that live in this city, what did they think? That they were just going to go and just turn over tables? That's happens more on Rugby Avenue during a football weekend than it would the last 2 days. How dare Chief Brackney do that? And by the way, why isn't Mike Murphy up here with you? Because he's the one that can do something. You all are just the wind addressing. Okay? I would have appreciated him to be up there with you all, since he made a lot of decisions, I'm sure, as part of the Unified Command. But that is what really angers me, is that we were mourning. When we lose our own loved ones, we are usually mourning for about a year before we start feeling better, and yet we weren't allowed to mourn. Thank God there were some strong people in there that were trained in de-escalation, especially Congregate Seville. I will tell you that being on the lawn and watching Congregate make that line about 50 or 60 feet from the police that were ready to gas innocent students, it was quiet. That whole lawn became, you could hear a pin drop, because the police knew that they were wrong. They knew that they were stupid in what they were doing, trying to gas students who had their university invaded by filthy Nazi scum. I know how I would have felt if it was my alma mater that had gone through that. I would be wanting to mourn and wanting to take that space back to say, this space is now safe. This space is ours. And students were almost not allowed to do that. And then they marched through the streets, you know, to proclaim their mourning and to proclaim what was important to them, and they were still harassed. I mean, you know, it was just unconscionable what happened, and I'm very sad that the Unified Command, I'm mad at the chief because she said homeless people would not be hassled. 2 of them were arrested over the weekend for no good reason. They certainly could have been escorted to someplace safe if they wanted to. There's no reason to, number one, put them through the criminal justice system again, okay? You know, and she also, you know, talked about the Fusion Center where she gets some of her intel. Well, by God, the Fusion Center has said that there is a massive infiltration of Klanners and neo-Nazi and right-wings throughout local police forces throughout this country. So when she starts, you know, releasing these people who are ultimately the ones that are out there to hurt us because they believe what they believe, then I'll think that we have started to turn a corner when we talk about policing in this community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Courtney Kelbel, and I'm here on behalf of the Central Virginia chapter of the National Lawyers Guild to read a statement. The National Lawyers Guild Central Virginia chapter condemns the deployment and violence of more than 1,000 regional and state police in Charlottesville 1 year after the tragic events of August 11th and 12th, 2017. The local community, led by a coalition of anti-racist activists under hashtag Seville Fights Back, gathered this weekend to mourn their losses and celebrate their resilience over the past year. At widely publicized events and in a coordinated statement, they reiterated their demands for rejecting white supremacy in all its forms, from unaffordable housing to needless immigrant deportations to symbols of hate. Through the weekend, these peaceful community members were met with lines of marching riot police, Virginia state troopers with chemical agent launchers, snipers on buildings and tanks, military helicopters, and ubiquitous surveillance devices. NLG provided legal observers an arrest hotline throughout the weekend and documented several incidents of law enforcement's aggressive tactics. Last year, NLG observed a heavy police presence that remained inactive while community members were attacked by torch-bearing white supremacists and neo-Nazis, traumatizing dozens and killing Heather Heyer. This year, legal observers saw community members successfully gather and de-escalate in the face of oppressive state intimidation. Despite limited evidence that white supremacists planned to march again in Charlottesville, Governor Ralph Northam and the city of Charlottesville declared a state of emergency preemptively by Wednesday, August 8th, and all city parks and recreation facilities were closed. Although no hate groups were visibly present, much of the city remained inaccessible due to barricades, and police restricted entry into the downtown mall with only 2 checkpoints. The list of banned items included soda, while open carry guns were allowed by law. Any violence or threat of violence came from the massive police presence provoking and escalating a traumatized community. On August 11th, UVA Students United's planned gathering faced restrictions announced by James E. Ryan, UVA's new president, including limited admission and metal detectors. When riot police inexplicably interrupted the event, community members, including a line of clergy, de-escalated the near violence. Students then took to the streets. Spanning the city, the 200 marchers successfully re-established their peaceful gathering outside of a militarized presence. Meanwhile, more than 100 riot police with canisters of chemical weapons at the ready lined the then-abandoned Rotunda and Thomas Jefferson statue. On August 12th, community members left a somber outdoor ceremony at Booker T. Washington Park to hold space at the Robert E. Lee statue and the Heather Heyer Memorial. Massive militarized police in full riot gear followed marchers on many occasions, often surrounding and trapping them, and sometimes in close proximity to downtown public housing communities. The Heather Heyer Memorial site became a militarized zone in itself, with barricades, mine-resistant, ambush-protected tanks, snipers and dump trucks, ultimately transforming it into the most volatile and least safe space in the city. Just steps away from the deadly car crash of 2017, several people, including a legal observer, were thrown by state police, while one individual was swarmed by multiple officers, violently tackled to the ground, and zip-tied. He was then forcibly picked up and hauled away, face toward the pavement and hanging by arms and feet. When confronted with concerns about excessive police presence in the city, spokesperson for the Charlottesville Police, Tony Newberry, is quoted in the Washington Post as stating, "We are trying to maintain order and have a duty and obligation to try and make sure there is no property damage." The National Lawyers Guild, in contrast, holds that human rights shall be regarded as more sacred than property interests.
Hello, my name is Gloria Beard. I'm a resident of Charlottesville, and I thank God there was no injuries or those outrights didn't come, because I was on pins and needles almost the whole weekend till Sunday. But I have something that's bothering me. Did anybody watch Documenting Hate on PBS? Well, there's something that's troubling me. I don't know if this has come out because, I go to all these meetings, but I can't remember sometimes what we really speak about, so much going on. But this reporter, he really investigated all that what happened last year. And, and I found out that all of this was going on before they hit Charlottesville in California and other cities. The violence, of actually hurting people. And my question is, why wasn't Charlottesville warned, or were they? Why didn't nobody take heed? Because these people had been on the move for a minute, and until they decided they was coming here and didn't cause the deaths of people and all these injuries. I don't understand that. I mean, the FBI, they had an obligation, so did Homeland Security. So what's the matter with these people? Do they not care about citizens? I'm not understanding. That bothers me. And it will till I get a real good answer from them, because they didn't want to talk to this reporter. And my next question is, are these people going to continue to try to come to cities, even Charlottesville, to do this marching? And will they be allowed to come back and do this stuff? Because, you know, people don't need to live in fear, and I'm too old for that foolishness.
Go ahead and grab this thing. My name's Tyler McGill. I live in 10 Page. First of all, I need to give thanks and props where they're due. I need to give them to Congregate. I need to give them to Wes and Nicoya, who I personally saw doing plenty of stuff at the front lines. I saw Wes, yeah, and Don Well, I'm just talking about the people who are up there. But yeah, no, there's plenty of people. But, you know, just the ones I'm looking at right now. So thank you. You know, you did a lot of de-escalation work at Campbell Hall. No, it's not Campbell Hall. Brooks Hall at UVA, for which I thank you, because that was about to become very ugly, and they wanted it to become ugly because they're embarrassed by last year, because they weren't here last year, especially at UVA. One wonders if UVA is even has a representative here. I don't know. Certainly not on stage. UVA is a very large part of this community, and perhaps they should have some things they need to answer for. But where's Mike Murphy? That's a good question as well. He could be up here. Sorry, you know, last year at UVA I had a stroke because somebody clocked me at the statue. So if I shake a little bit and I trail off, it's because 10% of my brain is permanently dead. Where is the middle ground? Where is the middle ground between last year and this year? Because, well, I guess we'll find out next year, won't we? Because they're coming back. There was more care for property than people, especially at UVA, but all over the place, as was quoted in the Washington Post. There was much more care for people than property. That too. And yet it was kind of weird because so many of the safety measures went away at sundown on Sunday, when Jason Kessler was coming back to Charlottesville. Now, he didn't end up doing anything. But if the state really cared all that much about what these horrible Nazis could do to our beautiful city, wouldn't they have kept the stuff up? Or were they really just here in order to keep tabs on Antifa and the people who live here? The fact is that anti-fascists, of which everybody in this room is one, we don't deserve prison. We deserve a parade.
Hi, I'm Catherine Lawn. I live in the Kellytown neighborhood in Charlottesville. And first, I want to say that I think that Tyler McGill is a hero, and he has never really gotten the recognition he deserves. He stepped in with the other students on August 11th and was injured. And anyway, we appreciate that. I think I'm reiterating what a number of other people have said, but I was there for many of the events this weekend. I was with Congregate, although I'm speaking for myself here, and what I saw was that the extraordinarily overbearing and highly militarized presence of the police created problems at every turn. That there were people who were peacefully gathering to remember, to mourn, sometimes to protest, not even always to protest, and that it was the presence of the police that created tension and anger and near riots. And it was heroic efforts of both the organizing efforts that happened in Charlottesville over the past year, and of individuals like Mayor Walker, like Vice Mayor Bellamy, like Lisa Wolfork, who I saw personally intervening with the police to de-escalate things that prevented problems. I was absolutely alarmed to hear in the press conference yesterday that the events of the weekend were being called highly successful and nearly flawlessly executed. It was despite and not because of the presence of that police force. And my concern is that that the police will internalize the plans that were made for this past weekend, and we now will find it even easier to bring out that tank, to bring out the riot shields when anything happens in the city. And I hope that we will push back hard against that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Fogel. I live in Belmont. I think the first question we ought to ask ourselves is, what are we doing here tonight? Is the City Council prepared to hold the people that it hired responsible for what happened? It certainly seems that the white people on the council never met a police action that they didn't love, or a military action that they didn't love. And one of them even declared this already a success. So she shouldn't be here. She already knows it's a success and apparently has her mind closed to what really was going on. But the notion that the government can stop us on the main streets of our city to conduct searches is unbelievable. I worked on a case in New York City where they had imposed a bag search policy in the subway system of New York. We lost that case, but the New York City was very careful to say we couldn't do this on the street. It took Charlottesville to show that we could do it on the street. This is unbelievable. People are getting used to going to concerts, to going to sporting events and so on, and having their bags searched, but not walking down the main street of our city. And are you going to hold anybody responsible? Did you ask the people that you were interviewing? Did you ask Mr. Murphy? How do you plan to handle August 12th? Did you? Do you know what was going to happen? Did you ask the police chief that you hired what you're going to do on the 12th? Did they tell us that they were going to have checkpoints? Not until Wednesday. Why did they hold that back? What was the secret? They didn't say they were going to search bags until people showed up. What was the secret? And how dare they search bags and then play the game of calling, and that's consensual. Well, damn it, when you walk out the door of your house, that's consensual too. And if you want to put a cop in front of everybody's door, under their theory, you can do it. Because they called an emergency without a factual basis for an emergency, and now they don't even want to acknowledge that there was no factual basis to declare an emergency. This was a training session, and this was a desire perhaps to make up for last year, but it's also making the notion that you can be stopped on the streets of your city without cause and be subject to a police search. And that is incredibly dangerous. That is the hallmark of an authoritarian society. I don't care how nice the cops are when they stop you. I don't care how nice they are when they search you. I don't care how nice they are when they arrest you. They have no right to search you on the streets of your city without cause to believe you're doing something wrong. And of course, as I say, I want to repeat, I don't think the council is going to do anything, because 3 members of the council love the police. Everything about them. Have always loved the police. We're never concerned about stop and frisk in this town. We're never concerned about the disproportionate number of people being arrested and prosecuted in this town. Now, it was amazing, of course, that you could bring together the resources that you brought together, and as Mr. Murphy said, with the most incredible teamwork that he's ever seen in his life, and you can do that for this. And the teamwork that they're so proud of in their law enforcement efforts to civil efforts to make lives better. Do you get it? Lives better, not repression.
Well, that was a hard act to follow, and I won't be so brash. But my name is Jeray, last name Bell. where I live here, so that really doesn't anyone's business. But what do we do from here? We see a lot of locals upset and up in arms, but what is City Council going to do to not necessarily pacify the situation, but actually make moves towards bettering the community? I did see, I saw a lot of interviews, like I saw one with Mayor Walker, I think it was Don Lemon on CNN maybe. Well, I know she was on CNN. And one of the things that stuck out to me was the fact that she noted that she wasn't getting a lot of intel and support with regards to this situation. And this is our own mayor. So that makes me very concerned as a taxpayer about what exactly is going on amongst everybody else. I know that Charlottesville has a way of silencing the black woman, but as we can see, she's sitting there, putting herself on the line on a continual basis, being the brunt of everything that goes on here. And what are we going to do? What are you all going to do to work together and work with your mayor who has been in office to make sure that we're all feeling safe? This was one weekend that, you know, I've been stopped. I was stopped walking out of work. I was trailed by state police this weekend for absolutely no reason. They saw me pull up into my white subdivision and decided that they didn't need to follow me anymore. That could have been my black son. That could have been my black husband, and I'm not with it. I don't think that's fair for anybody to have to succumb to, especially in this day and age. We live in a slave state, and I understand the concept here. I understand that everyone here, a lot of people have that Thomas Jefferson mentality, but at some point, we need to move past that and move through this. It's the same thing. I keep hearing the same talks, the same people trying to pacify situations, and it's not working. So you guys need to go to the board and figure out what you're going to do next. There are children that are involved in these types of things, and it is not safe for black people, people of any type of color or any minority to be here at that point in time. How are you going to make it safe for us? How are you making it safe for people who can barely afford to make ends meet live here? There's so many questions that always go unanswered. If somebody could just take the time out and answer them, that would be great. Then you guys won't have to see me anymore. Thank you very much. No. I was walking and I got stopped once, and I don't want to lose my job. I work somewhere heavily populated, and I was stopped. I was trailed by state police. I was driving from downtown towards my house and was trailed the entire time. He didn't even let a car get in front of him. He was so busy trying to trail me. So, of course, that's being black in America, but I didn't sign up for this. So if something could be done about that, that would be great too.
My name is Anne-Marie Smith. I live here in Charlottesville. I stood with Congregate over the weekend, but I am here to speak not on behalf of Congregate, but as a community member. I'd like to reiterate a point made by Tyler McGill about how what I witnessed this weekend was placing property over people. Our Constitution was written by white property owners to protect themselves and their property. And we saw the evidence and vestiges of that this weekend. Everywhere I went, I saw statues, what I believe Don Gathers likes to call participation trophies, surrounded, often not once, but multiple times by fencing and police, militarized police, and riot gear. I did not see people, our people in Charlottesville, treated with the same care, interest, not historically and certainly not over this weekend. We saw that on UVA on the grounds on Saturday night, and then, on Sunday. I'm getting my days, sorry, I'm nervous. Saturday night, and then later Saturday night, I happened to be downtown, and I was across from Lee Park. It was pitch dark, and I stood there with a reporter who had counted the number of militarized, full-on, riot-geared up police officers in the pitch dark, waiting for community members so they could unleash on them. The reporter stopped counting the police in the park when she reached 100. I stood there and watched more pull up on bikes and others come down the side. Why are we spending so much time, money, and energy protecting statues instead of people? If I may, I'd like to just make one more point, and that's about apologies. I'm a mother of 3 children, and what I teach my children is when you do something wrong, you take ownership for that and you apologize. As a start, I do that when I do something to my own children, which is often I apologize and I try to make reparations. All last week I was part of a lot of conversations where we were talking about why, how that still hasn't happened. Why hasn't that happened here in Charlottesville? And I hear a lot of talk about, well, the people who did the things are no longer here. When we talk about racism, we talk about how individuals often say that they're not racist, but they're part of systems that are. And I think the same applies to apologizing. I heard Jim Ryan apologize at a ticketed event, and there's certainly issues with that. But that was the first time I heard anyone take a mini stab at apologizing for what an institution is responsible for. And so I would invite Jim Ryan to take that beginning and bring it to the people directly affected last year, the students and community members that were harmed, to apologize directly and publicly to them. And I would also invite the council and the police department and the state police to consider doing the same thing. I don't care if it's new people or old people, we need to apologize for our institutions.
My name is Kyle. I'm a graduate student, or I live in Venable, I guess I'll say that. I'm a grad student at UVA. I've taught over 300 students at UVA, and so what I want to say next is that I am so goddamn proud of Virginia Student United, the brilliant tactics that were on display this weekend. If folks aren't familiar, the police and UVA forced the students to protest in a particular space, and they were like, "Nuh-uh, we're going to do things our way," and it was amazing. It was brilliant. But I just have to say, like, how did the police respond to that? They responded by lining up next to the Academical Village in riot gear, covering up someone with a tear gas canister. I don't feel like lessons are being learned. We're acting like lessons are being learned from last year, so we're going to over-police. But clearly that wasn't the solution. And also part of the solution is not seeing students peacefully protest on their own terms and then responding to that by saying, all right, well, we better get ready to kettle them. Like that's utter nonsense. I should also say, just speaking as a UVA student, it frustrated me to no end getting that email from basically the chief of security at UVA, Pat Hogan, sending out this email to all of us while we were marching down Rugby Street. Demonstrators are proceeding north on Rugby Road after leaving the designated demonstration area on the Rotunda North Plaza. Be advised and avoid the area. If the UVA was really on our side, that email would say they're heading down Rugby Road, protesting with these students on Rugby Road, making a difference with them. So yeah, that was very frustrating. Also, just pointing out a number of other things. UVA hosting all these cops over at Lambeth Commons. I work at WTJU. There were so many cop cars that they had to park the cars in between the individual dorm rooms. There were cops parked on the dirt hills leading up to the dorms. There was absolutely no space in that parking lot whatsoever. UVA really needs to get their lives together. The police helicopter hovering over us as if there was some sort of a chase going on downtown over at Rugby Road. That helicopter was like 300 feet away from us, and I heard a number of people say, this helicopter is not here to make us feel safe. It is here to drown us out, make us not be able to protest effectively, and I agree with that stuff. The last thing I want to say is that all of the de-escalation that we're talking about, folks de-escalating the police, it just shows once again that we are the only people that can defend ourselves, that it takes us to de-escalate the police in order for us to be safe. This whole weekend was a sham, and this was on display in multiple points, but it was on display when protesters, when they're heading downtown, can pass through the checkpoints, because apparently the police don't care about defending those checkpoints anymore. It is the police removing the barricade from 4th Street after an hour of confrontation and then just acting like it's no big deal that they're going to remove it into place. It just shows that all this stuff was not like... It just wasn't necessary. It wasn't necessary at all. This weekend was theater of the excess, and it was up to us to make sure that it didn't turn into some tragic drama, and for us to defend ourselves and make sure that this weekend was ours and not the police and not fascists. So that's all I have to say.
Hello, I'm Sina McGill. I'm not as eloquent as my husband. And what I am going to bring up is just my personal observations. I don't know the answers. I know this is a very hard problem that we're facing as a community to try to keep our community safe. From a lot of different parts. I was confused as to what the police presence was protecting. The downtown mall, Market Street, the park was all encapsulated, contained, protected. However, a number of the gatherings that were having large members of the community, had large members that would have been targets of Nazis if they had chosen to come, were totally absent of any protection except for personal security. First Presbyterian had nobody there. Mount Zion had nobody there. One hand, there was this overabundance of police and militaristic in the more affluent business area. But when it came to the actual groups of people who would potentially need protecting, there wasn't. So from my perspective, it did feel much more like when I went to Italy in 1984 and got off the plane to military guards with Uzis. That was the feeling. There has got to be something in between. Last year, I understand that this was such a response from last year, but last year there were credible threats, reports that we were going to get hundreds of militant alt-right activists coming into our community to intentionally seek to harm. As far as I know, and again, I can only go from my own knowledge base, there weren't those threats this year. It was the people who were here were the local protesters. I know we also have to protect property, but I do hope that people do come first. There was times when I felt that was escalating, and I saw a lot of the clergy and others trying to de-escalate things more so. I really hope that council takes into consideration the offer of de-escalation training for our police. I've been in the mental health community for many years. This is something I think our police force could use. I think every police force could use, because the police force model is not a de-escalation model. It is a contain and take over and hold up model. Sorry, but I also, the pilot truck that was leading the protesters on Sunday morning down Water Street, I think it was a regrettable, I don't know if it was a choice or if it just happened. Regrettably, the one Charlottesville police officer who was on that truck was one who has a history amongst many people in Charlottesville for not being the nicest, most sensitive police officer. And that might have been, again, I know these are little details, but that did actually cause some tension pretty quickly that was able to be de-escalated, luckily. So those are my words. Thank you for listening.
Hello, my name's Henry. I'm a resident of Charlottesville. I have two requests to make of the city and the police, and I'd like to know the answers to these questions. The first one is that it's my understanding that ICE may have been one of the law enforcement agencies involved in the mobilization and militarization of police last weekend. I would ask that the city and the police publicly confirm or deny this in a timely manner, and if there was any involvement of ICE, I would ask that they detail exactly what that was. And my second request is to know exactly what the necessity of the police helicopter hovering directly over our heads was throughout all of Saturday's rally into the night. Especially, I mean, as someone mentioned, it was hovering at times almost like 300 or less feet over our heads. It seemed that it was more intended to cow and intimidate and drown us out. And especially considering that last year, the police helicopter that was monitoring protests went down, crashed into the ground. How is it worth jeopardizing the demonstrators, the members of the community, and the students who were right below this protest, who were right below this helicopter? How is it worth putting them at risk of the helicopter potentially crashing into them? And if there was some good reason, some good security threat for having this helicopter, why was it not there exactly a year before, when the police knew that armed neo-Nazis with torches were going to come onto UVA's campus? Why was there not a spotlight on them? So I'd like the city to answer those questions. Thank you.
Hi, I won't state my name or where I live because of targeted Nazi and white supremacist violence. I would like for the city of Charlottesville to consider how they participate in the doxing and harassment of activists in Charlottesville by publishing names and pictures of activists. Drop the charges against anti-racist and anti-fascist activists in Charlottesville.
I just had one more quick point, sorry. Came back to me later. The prohibited items that were on the list, I could have sworn like somebody had a picture swarming around about like the dogs and stuff. Like we were restricting all types of nonsense from coming on the mall, but there is a leash law and people weren't following like the leash law. We need to tighten up on them. If that means y'all can decrease the over-policing in black neighborhoods and pay attention to people not following rules like that, because there's people scared of dogs, okay? And Kathy, where were you the weekend? I seen Heather, I seen Mike, I seen Wes, I seen Nakaya. Where was you at?
that's what I was doing.
Okay, the community wanted to know that. And also, I just want to say, you know, again, I didn't feel threatened by any of the cops. I don't know if they got a gold star by my name. I don't know. Maybe it's me. I didn't feel threatened by them. However, I will say, if this, and I said it before, this just isn't the apology or the accountability that we're looking for, not the over-policing. And we can't do this every year because there was a lot of money spent. I'm done for real.
Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm a resident of Charlottesville. And I experienced what a lot of other people experienced this weekend, which was an increase of tension as police presence increased. In Washington Park on Sunday morning, I felt safe, I felt proud, I felt strong, I felt like I was around other strong, proud people to be both celebrating, mourning, angry, rejoiceful. We felt all the feelings. I think I speak for everybody who was there. And all of a sudden, everything got very tense very quickly as movement toward the downtown mall was made. And on 4th Street and Water Street, those of us who were there witnessed that intensity. And then I got home and I watched what happened in DC, and I watched Jason Kessler get escorted by police and be treated like he was a precious item that had to be transported like a soft little egg that couldn't be broken to and from every location that he had to go to. I, on the other hand, did not feel that way as somebody who is standing for what I believe this city should value. So I encourage everybody just to look at that dichotomy and consider what are we protecting and who are we protecting. And my question is, I would like to get an official cost estimate of what this was. I'm sure somebody has asked that, but I might have missed it. Thank you.
Certainly we know that Mr. Kessler's ego is fragile. But anyway, my name is Adele Stitchell, and I live in Charlottesville. And I'm hearing a lot of folks talk about the ways that they perceived the police presence throughout the weekend. And one of my fears is that the police will come back to you all and say, well, here's why we had to do that. Look, you know, this is reasonable for this reason, or here's a really good explanation, and this is why this is necessary. And I hear that, right? But one thing I want to stress is that the image matters also, right? The way that it looks to folks matters, right? And to pretend that it doesn't matter how it looks as long as there's some kind of, you know, vaguely plausible explanation is callous, right? And it really denies the trauma that this community has been through. So I just want to ask that when the police come to you again and say this is why we have to do this, you ask them to consider how it will look. I mean, I remember at the Klan rally they said, well, we couldn't have people facing, you know, towards both the counter-protesters and the Klan for, you know, whatever a variety of sort of strategic reasons. That's ridiculous, first of all. But second of all, the fact that there's not a concern about how it looks to the community speaks volumes itself. So I would just ask that people consider that in addition to whatever strategic rationales are given.
Ma'am. Yeah. Can you tell me your name one more time?
My name's Adele Stitchell.
Adele, I didn't get it. That was the first thing. I couldn't hear you. Rosa Parks. Seriously, when you say the look, you mean like the optics of how it looked?
Right. So I mean that when the police decide to protect us, if that is what they're doing, protect us in certain ways, right? They often will act as if it doesn't matter at all how that is perceived by the community, right? You know, this is just what we have to do. We just got to do our job. This is how it is. You know, people don't understand. The lack of concern about how it looks and the callousness is people just don't understand when in fact people feel threatened and upset and angry. I think it actually, of course, as we've discussed, it escalates. And so I think it's not just sort of optics in a superficial sense, but about a lack of concern for how the community perceives the police work. And I think that there are easy solutions at times, not always, but at times there are easy solutions to that. Like, for example, you know, are the dogs necessary, that kind of thing. Can you face people, assuming that there were to be another incident like the Klan, can you face people looking both ways? You know, you're telling us you didn't have enough people or whatever reason. get enough, certainly you have enough people. Face people both directions. Care about how it looks to the community that you allegedly serve. That's sort of my thought.
Hi, I'm a community member. There was a chant that went up this weekend. It goes up a lot amongst protesters, the community members, and it goes, "Who keeps us safe? We keep us safe. Who keeps us safe? We keep us safe. Who keeps us safe? Yeah, because when we talk about over-policing, well, there was certainly plenty of that this weekend, but that happens every day of the year, and it happens particularly from certain members of the community. If you're a person of color, if you're queer, if you're trans, if you're poor, you're over-policed every damn day, and you certainly were over-policed this weekend, all right? So once again, who keeps us safe? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eileen Bartels. I live in the Belmont neighborhood, and I just wanted to share a couple of details that I noticed over at some events over the weekend. First of all, Sunday, August 12th, I arrived on Water Street in the afternoon, and I was standing at the corner of 4th and Water against the parking garage, and shortly before the random arrest occurred, that was sort of surprising and confusing, but right after that happened and they dragged this person away backwards, the police repositioned themselves and they formed a line across 4th Street right under the railroad bridge, effectively cutting off anyone from leaving the area that way. That was like a free way to disperse. And I'm really wondering if the optimal outcome of any event over this weekend was for people to peacefully protest or mourn or express themselves and then peacefully disperse. Why are the police deliberately preventing people from leaving? And then they were also blocking Water Street and going east, and there were also police presence. Obviously, 4th Street going toward the mall was completely blocked by a double line of police, and then Water Street going west had police. And also in the march on Saturday night that I participated in, I think it's called a kettle. They were behind us, they were in front of us, to try and make, that is not helpful, that is not safe. In all cases, we were just community members marching peacefully and raising our voices, and that just attempt to entrap residents of Charlottesville is completely unacceptable and not helpful, definitely escalating any tension that already existed. And the same thing about that helicopter where hovering right above us and then shining this spotlight, and I don't know if at times they were doing something different with that spotlight, but sometimes I actually felt like I was going to fall down. There was, I don't know what it was, but if you looked down at the ground and there were leaves, maybe shadows, but I actually thought I was going to pass out, and it was because of the light, because then it would stop. And I don't know if that was just me or if they were actually trying to do something to us. And also my third point is I work for the University of Virginia, and I don't think there's anyone officially here from UVA today, but I just want to say how very disappointed I am with the University of Virginia. And Monday morning, as someone else already shared, I had multiple I work for the health system, not the academic side, multiple emails about the march, about the plans. I work in IT, and managers in my department had to work overnight in the command center. Last year, when grounds were invaded by Nazis, I don't remember a single email. And I know UVA was warned in advance that they were coming. Thank you.
Hello, is this all right? Can you hear me? Yes, I'm Catherine McNamara. I live in Charlottesville. I went downtown Saturday afternoon. I wore a dress. I expected the mall. I understood that the mall was being locked down effectively, and that we could only enter through 2 points. I didn't expect to have my bag checked. And then I saw lineups of police up and down the mall, and I thought, wait a minute, are we suspects? This is much like what happened after 9/11, and TSA was invented and then decided that, which makes us all suspects. That was my sense on Saturday. I certainly felt no safety from the assembled police. because so much was prohibited, so much was checked on the part of us citizens, but anybody could have walked in with a gun because that's legal. And what might have happened then with so many armed people on the mall? It was, what shall I say, it was distressing, it was unconvincing, and I thought, and I'm still not sure I've thought this through, but I'm toying with the idea of asymmetrical warfare. What was the threat that required that kind of civic disturbance so that any of us, any and all of us, were treated as suspects?
Can we allow Ms. Wilder to go?
Good evening. I'm Gail Hyder-Wiley. I live in the city, and I have a suggestion and an observation. My suggestion is that the city take up Ms. Williamson or find the funds from wherever to do the de-escalation training, and that's city, county, and university police. But also that needs to extend to the Virginia State Police. And I would like to see whether there's some kind of way that institutionally there can be a certification or something in de-escalation, and that the city vow to not ask for mutual aid from other units unless they are certified in de-escalation. And this next observation pains me because I see some of myself in it, and this is hard for me to do. But in the past 18 months, I have made it my business to get woke. I've still got a long way to go, but I've been working hard on it. And I know that there are members of council who have come to this not any sooner than I have. But I know how to get woke. I surround myself with people. I read, I study, I go to classes, I do things. And over the course of this summer, I took both a protest safety course and I trained with Congregate. I am not speaking for them, I'm speaking only as myself. But one of the basic tenets, I mean, heck, I learned this being a Cub Scout leader, is in a situation where there might be danger, you go in 2s or 3s or whatever. And on Saturday afternoon, I had the chance observation of watching the police get freaked out over the fact that there was a group of black-clad individuals in the Surface parking lot. They went from 0 to 50 in no time flat, and you could see them gathering around the access point, just waiting. And I don't know who this group was, but they came through the security area very peacefully. They went to pay their respects to the memorial. But in that time of such tension, I happened to see Heather walking by herself. And as a busybody old lady, I reached out to her and to say, are you with somebody? This looks like it could blow up here. Are you with somebody? I'm worried about you. I don't know you personally. And the answer that I got, and I know it was a tense time, but I think it shines a light on why council isn't able to work very well together. Because I kid you not, the answer was, I don't need a buddy. I've got all these, as she motioned to the police. And that is so opposite of the people that I have been working with.
That certainly was not my implication. It was the community that I was saying was there. I'm sorry.
It certainly wasn't the direction in which you gestured made it look like it was just the police, because that was all who was over there then. And if I misunderstood that, I'm sorry, but I would like to at least have you think about whether it's implicit bias or just a rut you're in or whatever. I know I've had to climb out of that rut, and I'm still climbing, and I encourage all of us to think about what our preconceptions and our patterns are.
I appreciate that feedback, and I sincerely was meaning that the community was there, and I felt like there was other members of the community.
The people that I was with don't find all of that community safe, because it includes police that are amped up. And I think that's something worth council's study time on. Yeah.
That was a great segue, Gail. Thank you. I'm Dolly Joseph. I live in the county. I have 2 points I want to make. One is, and I wrote this before Gail came up, as a white woman, I work hard to dismantle my own bias and privilege while I do my work. I want to say that again. I do a lot of work to make sure that I check myself. I ask my friends to check myself, both white and black. I ask people to check in with me, and it's not the work of black people to tell us as white women what we're doing. That's bad, okay? We're talking carefully about institutions and what the university has done, and the institution of city council and the institution of Virginia State Police. But it's everyday actions that we do that's a huge part of what is happening in Charlottesville. It's the conversations that we have behind closed doors. We keep asking you politely, loudly, all the different channels that we have to open who you're listening to. And I hope that when we come to city council and we yell, that you're hearing that that's I hope that you will listen eventually, but there is an energy here in our community that you can choose to be part of this community that's coming together, and you can choose to be relevant, or you can choose to be irrelevant. And for that, I would like to address the community now. Pardon me while I switch media. And I want to thank you all for this weekend. We've listened into the summer. We've listened to one another and heard our privileges, our marginalization, and we've acted to make recompense. We've listened to each other to express our pain, our hurt, and our responsibility for that pain. We've heard each other's cry for trust, and we gave trust even when it was a painful risk to do so. We've listened to each other's jokes and laughed, even if they're not funny. We've done the work together even when it was hard, and even when we didn't want to, and even when we were tired. We've listened to our hearts, and we've made a change, and I appreciate the people who have done the work this summer. I appreciate the work who have been doing the work for years, and I hope that we can continue the energy that I personally felt this weekend to continue to change. And again, I'm asking on you, Kathy, I'm asking on you, Heather, and I'm asking Mike, if he were here, to be relevant to that conversation. I feel like all the time there's this adversarial relationship between the community and what we're saying, all the tactics that we're using, and you all. And it's got to change. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrea Massey, Charlottesville. I just want to talk about some of the disturbing, deplorable things I witnessed from the police this weekend. I mean, over and above the over-militarization, which was extremely disturbing and did not feel safe at all. On Saturday, when I was coming to the downtown mall in City Space, I saw a police officer looking up, taking a picture into City Space, and look up to see what he is taking a picture of, and it's 30 of his buddies, police officers, smiling, joking, you know, for the camera, like this is some kind of big effing joke. So that was the first one. Second, on the night, on Saturday night, the 11th, when very lovely, beautiful, there were musical acts lined up, there were people speaking. all of a sudden riot gear police marched down the side and frightened everybody. I mean, it entices people. People went over there. There was unlawful assembly called once, although they seemed to not call it again. They did not seem to know what they were doing and seemed very unorganized, which also seems very frightening. On the 12th, at Water Street, inside of Water Street, after Heather Heyer's mom spoke, and after someone was still, do not understand why, arrested and treated so excruciatingly violently, it was so difficult to watch. So they after that, they stood behind barricades for a while with the riot gear on, and then inexplicably removed the barriers and went into 2 rows. And then there was just this silence, this eerie silence, where they did not say anything. They did not say a reason for taking down the barricades. They did not give a reason for lining up the way they did and positioning the way they did. The people that were standing there in mourning just stood there, totally afraid to move. It was like they were enticing people to move into that space so they could arrest them or attack them, or I want an answer for what that movement was. Then we had people go in eventually and stand in the line. Then they stood out. There was a tank that came in with a soldier with a rifle sticking out of the armored truck. So I would like answers from why that happened. That seemed to, at that point of the weekend, seemed to be when something very tragic could have happened again, because of the police, not because of what anyone else was doing. And to Heather, I hate to pile on, and I feel like this is only because Kathy and Mike weren't there. So you're getting the brunt of this, but also on Sunday, it's just very hard for me to watch you. I watched you walk from that memorial space down the rows of cops, thanking them as you left, all of them as you left. And so to know what they did in this community this weekend and how they treat Black communities all year long, to watch you do that, and I know you have to know that at this point, is deeply concerning to have you on council.
Good afternoon. Rosa Parker speaking, a.k.a. Rosia Parker. Mike, I'm not going to look at council right now, because this is not about council. This is about me not having no longer respect for you. Can you look at me? I don't no longer have no respect for you, because y'all was confused even when y'all put out in the public what was to take place. Not only did y'all put Charlottesville in debt, but y'all put all of Northern Virginia in debt as well, because a lot of people got hurt over the weekend that was of color because of state of emergency, because the Black people were being followed, they were being profiled. Yeah, it's not just Charlottesville that was affected. It was affected to a lot of people. But for you to have been the interim you was assistant city manager, and so you and your people said that y'all started a year ago. Then your chief of police said you started a couple of months ago. So I think y'all was confused in when y'all started the process. And I also believe that you was confused in how long and how many meetings that y'all had in the community, because y'all waited till the last minute to start your procedure and telling the people about their safety. So like I said, y'all need to let us know when the lies is going to get fixed from when y'all had y'all's plans. Back to council. Nakaya, West, I would like to thank y'all for being out there. I am sick and tired of these white politicians or these white folks that think that they got power to continue to downgrade our folks when we built Charlottesville. And to you, Heather, yeah, you stood in front of me. So I watched you stand there. No sooner than you moved on the other side of me, You went and talked to the one police officer, and then you definitely thanked the police officers. You're looking just like you're looking now. Yeah, I know. But to watch the stuff that took place, how much more dangerous do our children have to be in, Mike? Our children have been through enough. I'm tired of watching them suffer for the actions of the people who's been put into place, who's supposed to be taking care of the local government of Charlottesville. We have not been protected yet. And you knew very well what Maurice Jones went through. So, but you're not there long, so you're not really worried about it. And I've been dealing with you on plenty of things before, so I already know how you was anyway. But to continuously be harmed and violated, I don't even really know how I continue to be able to still to fight. But what y'all do to us makes me want to fight. And I'm not going to stop fighting in this plantation till my people win. Because what you do, we're going to shut it down. And y'all are not going to be happy until we do shut it down. I am tired of my life being, I can't even find the words. Sometimes I got to really wonder, am I human being in Charlottesville? I went years back being in Charlottesville to come to help push the people along that couldn't speak for themselves or won't speak for themselves because y'all's local government continues to hold them down. I've watched black people get in trouble this weekend for having guns to protect themselves when y'all's white supremacy come in here knowing they were murders and everything else, and they can come in here with plenty weaponing. I go down to the downtown mall on Saturday. I specifically wore what I wore. My fat hanging out, my arms cut. Stand up, don't shoot, don't search me. But when I went through there, my little thing went off and she pat me down. She ain't find nothing. But because I didn't have nothing on it, don't mean I wouldn't have had nothing on me. Because they was just asking questions. And all you had to do was say yay or nay. So, Mike, I didn't appreciate that. To come back Saturday night and wasn't no police there to protect me at the main time if I was walking up and down the downtown mall. I could have been killed, or anybody else could have been killed. That's why that police got beat up. But now state police know how it feel. Just like we feel when we beat down every day coming from y'all's police officers not protecting us daily. And then, was Pleasance on the back of that truck that was escorting us up 4th Street from Preston Avenue. Yeah, look, baby Pleasance. Baby Pleasance. Somebody who didn't really want to be there this weekend, who was forced to take that duty. And I made sure it was my force, because it's my duty to fight, it's my duty to win. And I ain't got nothing to lose but my chains. And I made sure he knew that his time is up. No more harassment of my black fellow people. Yeah, that's enough. You've been knowing it was enough, but y'all still haven't done nothing about that, huh, Mike? But also, as we spoke to Chief Brackney, it was a letter given from the People's Coalition, and there were certain areas that was asked to be protected that wasn't, that was told there would be no parking, which was Friendship Court. Rose Hill Drive was supposed to have been double checked. None of that was done, because I parked specifically in Friendship Court to see what y'all was doing. Y'all made all of these decisions about what was going to be closed down. But why didn't y'all make sure that y'all did what y'all said y'all was going to do? That y'all were filling in the gaps. What gaps did y'all fill in? Y'all opened up the gap. And then when the person went to jail went to court yesterday, I think y'all really do like racism, because a judge do show that. Because why would you have the white supremacy, Brian Lambert, in the same courtroom with the other victim and other victims that have been victims to the white supremacy to continuously be there? They hide them in the courtroom, allow them to come out being escorted from the police. That's not fair to us. The only escort we get is being hog-tied or dragged, slammed up against cars. We could have a nick bag. We going down hard, being black, huh, Mike? But, yeah, as Miss Heather because your buddy over there probably getting some more awards in Defendercy of Democracy. I would like to have those awards because they belong to me. But I'm tired. I'm tired. Oh, I want to also thank the 6 CRB members that was represented out there this weekend. As we say, as the police said, they was watching behavior. We was watching the police's behavior. So don't think that this is going to go away. Because if we got to continuously spend $2 million that could have been used for the kids, a roof over my head, the roof over my friend's head, the generations of people's heads that ain't got hair roofs, I think we could have used that $2 million for that. But y'all could have really fixed that. If y'all wanted to have the, what is it, the National Guard Army, y'all should have had that last year. Y'all should have had all that J8 when I was getting hit with them 2 tear gas grenades and getting hit with shields. But I still want to know, Mike, who was calling them demands that day? Because y'all said only one, but then y'all had many. Then it was very confusing. So I don't understand what y'all was doing. But like I say, if it was planned a year ago, y'all surely did a poor job. And I'm very disappointed. But I'm not going to say no more right now, because I'm still waiting for the next meetings, because I'm still coming with some more. So, thank you.
Katrina Turner. Well, first of all, I just want to say something to Heather. Ooh. Last year, you thanked the police for the job that they did. We all know they stood down last year, but your little heart, you remember you put on Facebook thanking the police for their job? And then you did it again yesterday. How long were you out there on the street to see how good those cops did? When that standout that you were at yesterday, how long were you there?
I was out in the community. I started down at
The standoff,
Washington
when
Park.
at Heather Higher Way.
I was downtown the entire time.
How long were you at Heather Higher Way
I
when
was
the
there from
standoff was
probably
going
1
on?
p.m. until I left to go to with West to NAACP at 4 p.m. I was on one side of the mall or the other.
No. I just know that, yeah.
West
Yeah,
and I
we left.
we went to the same 4 o'clock event, and I left before 4 to ride my bike to the NAACP event at 4 o'clock, and that's where he was as well. And he and I were down prior to that on the streets together. Is that true?
On Sunday?
On Sunday, yes.
She was out there at the end after you did the negotiations to get
Yes.
the
I
board.
was-
That's when
I
she
actually
came out.
I made a call to
at the end.
I made a call to Mr. Murphy and asked if there's any flexibility in how we could allow for the group that was there and wanting to have access from both sides to get in. And it obviously wasn't my call to make, but I just expressed what I was observing, and I felt that we needed to have more flexibility and to allow that group to access. And shortly thereafter, obviously Wes was up front talking to you all, and the law enforcement made that decision. But I was there that entire time.
Well, can
I'm not
y'all
always-
tell us why they put riot gear on us? Can y'all tell us why they did that on Sunday? And we're in where we had to go through the security. We're in the back, and the police are facing us. Though one of the police officers were sitting there just intimidating, where made Rosea go off and another man go off on him. But they disrespected the people out there. And they made the people go off on them out there by them disrespecting. One police officer just kept rolling his eyes up in his head at us like, why are you doing that? If you didn't want to be here, if you had to lose your job, if you didn't want to be here, you should have lost your job and not came here. One important thing I have been asking, and everybody, what threat did this city have to shut this city down? Because you all know we get intel. And we gave y'all a lot of intel last year to where this town should have been shut down last year. But the intel we get is that the reason they shut this town down is not because of the alt-right, not because of the Klan, not because of the Proud Boys, but for Antifa. Now, I want to know if that's true. If our town was shut down because of Antifa, because if it was, that's a problem. Because Antifa saved this town. So why was this town shut down for that? When are we going to get the answer of why this town was actually shut down? That's what they. When are you going to tell us why? Was it because of Antifa? You won't tell us anything else. You keep telling us that this city did not have a threat. So why was this city shut down? I want to know why they put on riot gear on us on Sunday. That's what I want to know also. Why did they put riot gear on us?
Ms. Turner.
Oh, wait a minute. And another thing. When they did, thank you, Rosia, when they did what they did on Sunday, they gave Susan Bro respect, and I understand that. They gave her the respect enough to leave from down there. And as soon as Susan Bro left they started suiting up on us. Why? If they was going to get in riot gear, why didn't they do it when Susan Bro was there? If they can respect her that much, why didn't they respect us that much? Well, yeah, we don't know. When we were marching to go to the checkpoint, it was like a mist in the air before we even got there. There was nothing but police standing right there. And it was a mist in the air to where people were covering their mouth up. Why? They knew we were on our way. Another thing, when you got the roads and everything open, how the police took their bikes. Now, they already said the checkpoint was going to be open. Why didn't they open it up? Why didn't they open up the checkpoint instead of taking their bikes and dragging them like they did on that day? Why didn't they just open it up and let us go head on through? Why? They were intimidating people this weekend, and I know you all know that. So what are we going to do? I mean, how are we going to solve this? We can't keep going through this. I ain't saying I'm too old, but come on, we can't keep doing all this marching for justice when everybody in this town knows that the black and brown people do not have the same justice as everybody. So when is it going to stop, y'all? That's all.
I'm a Charlottesville resident. I cannot speak as eloquently as most of these speakers had tonight about the extreme over-policing that happened in this city, not only this past weekend, but historically. So I'm going to make a few observations. One, about tonight, not one commenter made a positive response about what has happened in this city this past weekend. Not one. And I'm not going to be the first. Just a few quick observations about things that I saw personally that I haven't seen, talked about, or heard about other places. First of all, Friday night, walking down Jefferson Street, the state police had rolled in and put up these soft checkpoints at all intersections. They were blocking off the intersections with cruisers with vicious, barking police dogs. You could hear them a block away, and you got close, and they were attacking the windows. I am not afraid of dogs, and I was terrified. At the Service for Repair, I witnessed the state troopers roll in there with 12 troopers, half of them in riot gear, up onto the lawn at the Service of Repair, and only to be turned back when they reached the steps by activists I saw the state police riot squads pour out of buses at the Lee statue, walk up to it, stand in front of it, get their picture taken, and then march over to the library. I approached a checkpoint early on Saturday morning. I was told by the 2 Virginia State Police who were there that I was not allowed to bring in a bag. When I protested, they told me they had to search my bag completely, and they would not tell me why. Also, Chief Brackney told us at the public meeting previously at the Mount Zion Church that bags and people would not be searched. She told us that. She stood up on the stage and said people would not be searched. Not only were people searched, black people were more heavily scrutinized than white people. I saw it with my own eyes. I saw white women walk through the checkpoint. Nobody looked at them. A black person behind them was basically strip searched. I saw that. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Brenda Brown Grooms. I live in Albemarle County. I'm a native of Charlottesville, Virginia. What is going on in Charlottesville has gone on all of my life. Let me begin by saying we have a right to be angry, but what are we going to do with our anger? We cannot live in anger for too much longer because it'll kill us. City Council, leaders of Charlottesville, you have had a habit of not listening to the people when they come to you with their complaints. If you want to know why people scream at the meetings, it's because they've discovered that that's the only way you don't forget what they're saying. And there's a very simple way to get people to stop screaming. Listen and show that you've heard their complaints and are acting on it. Having said that, let me say this. We have a singular moment in the history of this town, in the history of this nation. We can continue to be angry, and we have every right to be angry and disappointed, or we can all decide to stop right now, start listening to each other. City Council, do your job. Interim Mayor, do your job. People of Charlottesville, keep protesting, keep holding people's feet to the fire, but let us begin right now to say, we're just going to stop being enemies. We are going to work together. I have been black all my life. I anticipate that I will be until I die. So I know what I'm talking about. Life is not easy for a person of color, and don't be a woman and intelligent too. It gets to be nearly impossible, but I have taken my claim on this place, and I will do what I can do to make it better. I will call you out if you are a fool and a racist. I will call you out, but I will also call you out if you are an obstructionist. We have got to figure out how to work together. It's going to be hard. It is hard. It's almost impossible. But we have a moment where we can do something extraordinary. It's going to be difficult. It is difficult. When I tell you to your face that I think you're a lie and a cheat and the truth is not in you, you are not going to like it. If you have occasion to tell me the same thing, you are not going to like it. But guess what? I'm going to take it, and so are you, because the outcome is worth it. We have to ask ourselves how we're going to form the ground, the dirt under our feet, so that we can continue to grow and live and to become the city we want to become. I know we're not who we pretend to be. You know we're not who we pretend to be, but how are we going to get there? How are we going to get there? We're going to have to figure out how to talk to each other and how to listen to each other, how to be honest. And when I tell you I don't like what you're doing and I want you to hear me and I need to see some response, that's what y'all need to do. If you don't want folk yelling at the city council meetings, then you've got to change your behavior toward us. And I don't want to spend my life yelling. I got a big mouth. I can talk for a very long time. I'm a preacher. I'm good at it. But I don't like talking to no purpose. We have a job to do. We have an opportunity that is incredible. It may not ever come again, but we have the slimmest opportunity to go through this little crack in the door so we can all get on the same page. But there's plenty good room. We cannot keep on buying into the false narrative that there's not enough or that some folks deserve all there is of what there is available. That's a lie. There's plenty of room. Plenty good room, as the old folks say. But we've got to make up our minds that we're going to share. Charlottesville can no longer be beautiful on the outside. It's got to be beautiful on the inside for everybody. Stop talking so much. Let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. I don't know if my questions are that important, but it was a couple of observations. I want to confirm what Miss Katrina said about feeling something drop from the sky, because I felt it twice down on Water Street. My colleague said it must have been rain because some clouds were moving in. They could have been, but it did not feel like that. It did not feel like aqua. It felt oily. It felt greasy. It didn't feel right, and I felt it twice. So I don't know what I was exposed to. Number two, why was a K-9 unit dispatched to Washington Park for the duration of the rally there when people were talking about affordable housing, when people were talking about abolishing ICE, where people were talking about their experiences last year? When a K-9 unit next door, it was parked at Oxford Hill Apartments in their parking lot. Why was a K-9 unit dispatched there, Unified Command? I don't really see anybody from Unified Command. But I want to know why. That's a Bull Connor visual. And if you all don't know who Bull Connor is, Birmingham, early 60s, water cannons, German Shepherds, kids. I don't have to tell a lot of people in this room what it is, but I think some of us who look like me need to remember that history and what a German Shepherd in the back of it was Logan Witzel. I just happen to remember him because he used to be the downtown resource officer for a long time. And the other question I had, I did not know that Baby Pleasance, that racist, was on the back of that truck going down through 4th Street. Do you know what 4th Street Northwest is? When these marchers came down here, do you know what this was? This was a black neighborhood that was destroyed because of greed, because of Jim Crow, because of urban non-development. And those survivors were walking through this neighborhood. You know, I don't know if, I think it was intentional to honor what was here, what was taken away, what has not been replaced, and what people have been asking to be replaced. And yet you had bicycle cops on the tails of these marchers. You know, we want to come together. You have to. Somebody has to apologize for that shit. And it's not the marchers. It's the others. Thank you.
Ms. Carpenter, I have a quick follow-up question. Do you know what time the K-9, did you say they were deployed at Washington Park?
Yes, because I was on, my station was right along Preston Avenue, and I watched multiple paddy wagons go back and forth. I watched multiple unmarked go back and forth, and they put a marked unit, 4-door sedan. They put a K-9 unit. They had 2 unmarked SUVs. An emergency management vehicle went in there and back. They had a marked unit up on the gravel drive on the other opposite side of Madison Road where the white apartments are. I cannot remember their name to save my soul. But they were there most of the entire time that rally happened. Now I'm going to tell you, I don't know what a K-9 dog would have done had an idiot wanted to come down the hill towards town and go fast and put a AR-15 out the window and spray down that hill. That damn dog wouldn't have done a damn bit of good. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a city resident. I want to talk for a second about accountability and note a decision that was clearly made tonight, which is that Mike Murphy's not up on stage listening. He's in the back taking notes. Chief Brackney's not here. I also want to note that the powers that be have already declared this a success. Loud and clear with, 16 people laid out in a press conference. Loud and clear. The authorities have told us that this weekend was a success, and we have heard from everybody. And we're saying it tonight, and it was obvious to everybody, and it was all over social media, and Wes and Nakaya, you guys were in the thick of it, and you know, this was a shit show, right? You have now heard us say this over and over and over again, but you chose not to have Chief Brackney up here and Mike Murphy up here, and the times that the crowd has addressed Mike, it hasn't been pretty, right? If them not being up here was because you didn't want us to be uncivil towards the people that perhaps we had the most rights to be angry with, because you're just our city council and it's not a strong mayor system, the interim city manager is in charge, all of these things. This all wrapped into this question of who's accountable, right? You didn't put them up here tonight. That made tonight easier. It makes tomorrow harder for you. And here's why. Because now you have to tell them what we said. And it cannot happen behind closed doors. And it cannot, and you cannot allow Nakaya to have to go on Facebook to say it. City Council has to speak together, clearly, in public, and hold the powers that be accountable. And I would say 1,000 things about how amazing this community is, but it's all been said, so thank you.
Sir, I think it's important for us. One, that point is well taken. And I think one of the things I'm hearing tonight is there was just a lack of communication from our end, police, but I don't know if we could, I don't know, it's obvious we didn't communicate as well to the public in regards to what's going on, whether it be in real time or what's happening afterwards. But just so you know, like for tonight, right, because I don't want you to leave, I don't know when we're going to get our chance to talk because there's still more people talking, and I don't want you to leave before you hear. For tonight, as Mayor Walker said, we had already planned this session, and this is our session. So we specifically, before we knew whatever was going to happen this weekend, we wanted to be able to simply listen to you all. Now, was it a mistake that we didn't have the foresight to say, well, we should have our police chief here or up here and our city manager here? We collectively made that decision not to do so. But if that was a mistake and you all feel as if they should have been, me personally, I'm fine with taking that on the chin, and we can make sure we do better about it at the next time. So I hear you, but I want you to understand the logic and what was behind this decision.
And I can only speak for myself that that's reasonable. Yeah. And I'm not saying that you should have had them here. I'm saying that not having them here means that now it's on you, right, collectively, in a unified voice, to tell them what we said so we can hear you.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback. So thank you.
The issue of communication, it strikes me as really an important thing. There were 2 times that it seemed to me like it really got tense. It was from my observation, and that was Saturday at Brooks Hall when that long line of Virginia State Police came marching down and to face the students and faculty and citizens and declared an unlawful assembly. That was one time. And the other time was Sunday afternoon, right after the memorial on Heather Heyer Way, when the police, the Virginia State Police, arrested the woman on Water Street. both of those times, it really frightens me to think what might have happened if Dr. Bellamy and Deacon Don Gathers had not been there, if Mayor Nakaya Walker had not been there. There were people we trust there to intercede for us with the police. And I think that's what made most of us wait it out and, you know, to see what was going to happen and feel a little safer knowing you were there. Thank you so much. And also, I recognized Seth Wispelway, and he came with a group of his Congregate Charlottesville storming up Water Street when I was stranded down there by myself and I was scared. They came storming up Water Street towards that to de-escalate, and they succeeded. They helped Sunday afternoon too. My question is, and I understand if this is something you can't talk about, and so I don't want to, you know, ask anything that's not right. If you can talk about it. I've heard different stories about what happened at Brooks Hall. I've heard the representative from UVA claimed that it was only momentarily claimed as an unlawful assembly, and then that was rescinded within a minute. I was watching the live stream through, you know, a friend, and I saw, it looked to me like a lot longer than a minute, that you were having to negotiate with the police. So, okay, so I've got two things. One, I just remembered a question. Okay, so it's two questions. I'll save that tough one for last. The first one is, why didn't the police have something like bullhorns or microphones or something Sunday during that long time that none of us knew what was going to happen or why the police were all so tense? If they could have just told us what they wanted us to do, it would have helped. A lot of us couldn't even get out. So if there was some way for them to communicate with us the way you communicate with us, that would be nice. My question is, can you tell us anything about those negotiations, about what was going on, and, you know, why they called an unlawful assembly and how you were able to stop it? And I know you may not be able to talk about it. And the same thing for Sunday afternoon.
One thing I will say is I think Ms. Hill has been getting, and I understand people's perspectives. People have different feelings, but I do think I appreciated her being there, and I appreciated what she did in terms of assistance in regards to the negotiations. I think a great deal of credit doesn't necessarily go to me. This is kind of my job, and I think Mr. Gathers, as well as the congregate members, Congregate Seville members, they played a huge role. Essentially, I don't know if I can talk about like what we were saying to each other because we haven't spoke about it, but I do think I hear your point as well as everyone else's point in regards to a lack of communication about simply stating what was going on, why are the police standing here, why is there a standstill? I'm sorry, what are you saying? What? I'm not going to repeat that, but why this is going on the way in which it was going on. And when we were having conversations, and I'm sure Mr. Gathers he can attest to this, when I was talking to the police, and I know he was there, it was more so asking to them on Saturday night at UVA, can you understand why people would be really upset and emotionally charged? Because I had just got there and was listening maybe for 10 minutes, and even in this position when I saw the police marching like choo choo choo, my blood pressure went up. So just that conversation with them about let's understand where each other are coming from, and the lieutenant's response to me during that time was, I can see your perspective. We're here only as a precaution. And if we can lower, I asked them, can you lower your shields? Can we just tone it down a little bit? And they obliged. And then it seemed as if things were okay. Similar to Sunday, I think your suggestion about a bull explaining why they were assembling the way they were. I know during our conversations, and Mr. Gathers was there with me again, our conversations were, is there any leeway in regards to what we can do to make people feel at ease? Ms. Lisa Woolfolk played a very pivotal role as Ms. Rosa Parks was expressing herself about why people were upset, and I think a lot of that was about a checkpoint. People were coming out of from when they were mourning, and because Ms. Bro had, because they wanted to make sure they had space for Ms. Bro, people, after she left, there was people who came out of behind the barrier. There was no way for them to know who was going back into that area. And I understand people's perspective about, well, we just came out. Why are the police now blocking us from going back in? But we don't know who was in that crowd. And God forbid if an individual who I may not agree with their ideology, I have to be careful with what I say, a person who I may not agree with went into that crowd because they didn't go back through a checkpoint and did something very damaging, I would have been very, very upset. So the police's perspective was, we need to send everybody back through the checkpoint just to make sure they're safe. And it was at that point, Ms. Woolfolk was coming up with suggestions. We all were talking back and forth. Is it a way we can just de-escalate? It was at that point also Ms. Hill called Mr. Murphy and asked, is there a way that we can find out some kind of happy medium? Mayor Walker and I were talking the whole time, and that was a collective team effort for us to be able to figure out the best possible solution. And that's when you saw the officers step back. They lowered their shields, and in fact, Mr. Gathers and I then said, okay, well, what can we do next? And they said, you know what? We just got off the phone. We're going to end it all. The police were going to walk out. I can't remember who else made the suggestion. She's in here, or she was in here, and her name is killing me. But she said, or escaping me, she asked specifically, can we have the officer who's on the tank with the gun, can he put his gun down? She asked me that. I literally asked the lieutenant, and he said, yeah, no problem. The officer was saying, to a certain extent, he wasn't quite comfortable putting his gun down, so he put it down a little bit. And the lieutenant, though, to his credit, lieutenant was said, no, some more, and put it all the way down in there. That's what I'm commanding you to do. And that's what they did. So I think it's all about communication, right? And so your point is well taken. Would they have done it if we
What we
wouldn't have
needed
had?
this weekend was to be able to multiply you and Nakaya, and I'm not throwing shade on
Right.
Heather or Kathy. I'm by praising you two. You know, it shouldn't be your job to be out there in the streets putting your body on the line as city councilors. I got to give these guys high praise because that's what they did. And it was clear it was out of love and dedication.
I also want to we're coming up towards the end of our time, and I'm not saying that you all won't get to speak, but if people are walking out, so I want to make sure. There was one time this weekend where, and Wes just hit on it when he said you don't know who's in the crowd, where I was behind the barricade and I told them I need to get out of this situation now. The rest of the weekend, I drove around all weekend long trying to just see what was going on, what was happening, observing how people were being treated, observing and hearing conversations, because I was parked right in the parking lot where a lot of individuals parked or walked past on the sidewalk, and the mood they were in. And I think what happened this weekend is telling of just the Charlottesville that we lived in, because there were people who weren't concerned about the police presence. Their number one goal was to make sure that businesses on the mall felt supported. They didn't seem to be concerned. I don't know what happened and how the conversations were going at Checkpoint, because I was not close enough to hear them. But I just think that it's also telling when the gentleman spoke earlier that we haven't heard one positive thing. I think that if the individuals who would say something positive would come out, because we're seeing some of that on social media and in the newspapers, then we would hear the different versions, of the story. But what I'm sitting here, and as Wes was talking, and it came up a little bit earlier, I'm realizing that most of you don't have any idea of what policing actually looks and feels like. Besides that moment that I just talked about, the police were rather calm if you live in neighborhoods that they police. Nobody that I saw, minus Sunday, and even that was mild to some of the abuses that I've seen during my life. And so it's hard for me, and I'm trying to process. I'm really trying to process this year, but it's really difficult for me as someone who's just lived in Charlottesville all of her life, how I have watched the police here. And that didn't happen this weekend. And again, I am not defending anyone, but I want to make it, just clear to those who may not understand, and I want for those who do understand. I have watched individuals who don't get a chance to speak. When you have your knee or throat, someone's knee in your throat, while other people are trying to tussle with you, turn you over. I have watched people, doors completely get kicked off while their children and grandmothers are on couches. So I want to make sure that we are clear when there's a gun in your face, not on a tank pointed at you, but in your face. And you know that if they decided to pull that trigger, that there would probably not be a judge in the area who would find fault to them. So when we're complaining, and I'm not saying that we don't have a right to complain, I want to make sure that you understand that the complaints that you're talking about are very different from how black people, brown people, and poor white people in this community have lived and have been policed. And I want to make sure that we don't get those conversations and messages confused, because they are very different than what happened here this weekend. So yes, we have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of complaints, and there were things that happened this year that didn't happen last year, and we would like for things to be different. And all of those things are true. But if you live in neighborhoods, if you've really been policed, if you've really been fearful, when I stood in front of the cops, there was one cop there on Sunday, which is part of my attention came from. I'm thinking if most people are observing him, I don't know what I just need to be out. When you are in that kind of situation where the fear comes back because of what has happened in the past, what you've seen in the past. When I talk about the fact that I don't know a Native family in Charlottesville that hasn't been subjected to the kind of abuses I think we're all are talking about, but very few of us really understand, right? And there's a way to make sure that when we're having these conversations here, that we make sure that it's clear that it's not the same conversation. So I did not see police officers as aggressive as I've seen them most of my life. But I will say that their mere presence make it difficult for me to feel safe or have anything positive to really say or to trust movements. And I think that we have to be clear about that. My son, I saw people with their kids out in sandals and flip-flops, and the friend that I was with said, what if they don't know that they might have to run? My son was at home. It was no way you're walking out this door, not with your black skin, not with your black face. You're not. And that's different, okay? It is very different. If you read and how the movement to de-arm them, and that ended for most of them with slaughter, it's very different. And so for people here, people of privilege, white people of privilege, even those who consider themselves allies of the movement, you have to make sure that you're clear that there is a difference. And that is what I just got from what Wes, had to say. It is no way that my brothers and my cousins could do any of that yelling, screaming, cursing at police officers and everybody go unharmed and go home. There is no way. So even what's being allowed, my cousin is in the back shaking her head like, absolutely, right? It would not happen. I'm telling you, it's a different world. It is a completely different world. And it's even the challenge that we see here when we're trying to figure out how to work together and, do this work together and figure out the right things to do. So there was no way that I could sit in a room, get more intel than I received, and been able to really do anything with it. Because for me, my foundation, what I've learned my entire life and seen, would have come to play at any point. So when I said things like, hey, I don't have much information, I didn't, I still don't. But I'm going to tell you that one thing that I made clear was that if we had similar people showing up as they did last year, I would have wanted the police to be present and to be singing a different tune than they were. And just because they were not here and they were in DC, I think that there may have been some movement that I saw that was different than even a couple of months ago. So I saw police block me in my car from being able to go onto Main Street when the march started going from UVA down to Main Street. And there wasn't an attempt to block that march. They were blocking cars to make sure. And that, we are all seeing things from different vantage points, right? And so they were blocking cars. I was one of those cars. I was coming up the side street by Mills thinking I could get around it, and that did not happen, to make sure that people who were in the streets marching were safe. I'm sure I wasn't everywhere and I missed some beats, and I would have liked for it to have been a different outcome this year than was last year. But I think that there were some things that happened differently. And hopefully the people who made the plans will tell us at some point. But I also want to make sure that we understand that it's very different than what happens every day, and that we have to make sure that we're having that conversation about everyday policing.
We're not finishing. We're not finishing. Yeah. If there's anyone else, if you could get in line so we can stop the line, because I know we're way past the time. We want to respect everyone's time, and we could just get them all.
I'll make it really quick.
No, you don't gotta be quick.
It's fine. Nakaya already touched on what I was going to say, so that was enough. Oh, sorry. So I just want to say that the over-militarization of Charlottesville was very impactful to marginalized communities, especially those just walking around every day, even being at home, waking up at, 8 o'clock and hearing a helicopter, hovering over you. It was like, okay, where are we? So that was just strange, but I'll touch more on that at City Council. But I do want to thank several of the community members, well, actually the whole Charlottesville community, I think one of the more positive things that came out of this weekend was the community, the sense of community. We were all there, we all had a cause, and we were all there for the same purpose, to show that Charlottesville is no longer accepting white supremacy. We're going to stand up to racism and fascism. Okay. I had more, but you know.
Brendan Hassler, county resident. If it's poor form to address council members individually, I apologize, but Dr. Bellamy, Wes. On Saturday night, you came up to me in front of Brooks Hall and made me promise that I would keep things peaceful, that I would try to stay unarrested and alive. So, promise kept.
And then it turned 10 minutes later.
Right. I was going to talk, when I got in line, about the militarization of the police. I was going to talk about how they approached us in riot gear. I was going to talk about how 10 feet behind me I saw a protester get tackled by 3 police officers for I don't know what. I didn't see anything happening. I was going to say that, but Ms. Walker, the point you just made, you're right. It'd be wrong for me to frame myself as a primary victim of police violence, and I think that I should change the tone of that right now. And I think you're right. Everyday policing is a problem, and so much more for communities of color than for a person like me and my white skin. It's so much of a problem in that case. And I want that to be the emphasis as well, that if communities of color are feeling the same way that we were feeling that weekend, then we should be able to continue to work to fix that. That we should be able to feel that even if the cops were showing up in force on the weekend, we should make sure that the cops aren't showing up in force at all. That if we are going to do policing, that it shouldn't be done out of the barrel of a gun or done with such horrible violence that we need to affirm that Black lives do matter. It should be done with, I'm sorry. Thanks. But, right, everyday policing, if we do have that problem, I want to be able to tackle that as well. And if that's the way that communities of color are feeling, then that is a serious problem, and that needs to be addressed as well. And I think that that's some work that we, as both residents and people on city council and our city manager and our new police chief, should all be coming together to work for immediately. Thank you.
And I want everybody to share what they came here to share. I wasn't, Wes said something, I had a thought, and it was several thoughts, but no, we are here to listen, and your experience is your experience. So please share.
I'm Zoe Krylova. I live in the county. On Saturday morning, I went to the farmers market at Ix, the farmers market that had been inexplicably canceled, but managed to find a location outside of the police zone. While there, I saw a couple dozen police on bicycles roll in and loop through the parking lot. Many of us wondered, why are they here? Is there a threat? But I watched them and I videotaped them, and I saw they were just having fun. It was their morning exercise. And suddenly I felt like Charlottesville was Happy Cop summer camp. At our expense, they were here having fun with their buddies, practicing their police maneuvers on our town. After last year, when we were victims of Nazi violence and police complicity, this year we were guinea pigs for how to run a police state. After what we went through last year, we became an experiment this year. And to speak to optics, if they were here to protect us, why don't we faces of silent cops? When they showed up suddenly after our beautiful gathering in Washington Park and we marched down Preston owning our streets, why didn't they say out loud, "We are here to escort you"? If they were there to protect the back end of the march from oncoming cars, why didn't they verbally reassure us of that? The police may have come here to protect us, but they were also here to arrest us. On Sunday evening, after I saw all the barricades and checkpoints suddenly come down, I went and had a beer with my friend. We chatted and processed for some time. When I was driving home, I saw several police on motorcycles heading south on South 29 on the front and back end of about 5 empty school buses. I'd like to think there was nothing weird about that, but on 7 p.m. on a Sunday night, I have to ask, what was that about? Were those empty school buses meant to be paddy wagons? I'd like to know.
Hi, my name is Rory Stolzenberg. I'm a downtown resident. I live on Water Street between First and Second. And I'd like to echo the mayor's point and Tanisha's point and a bunch of people at council last week that after the miserable failure of last year, we did need and expect more from our government and our police. And it's the fact that no one was seriously injured this weekend and that thankfully the Nazis didn't come back, not through divine providence, but through the tireless work of our anti-fascists who dismantled their organization over the last year. But it's because of those facts that we have the luxury to come up here and criticize today about the onerous restrictions we didn't like of this weekend. To that end, as a downtown resident and a white man, I recognize my privilege that I didn't have to experience a lot of what a lot of other people had to go through this last weekend. I was right in the middle of it, but I could wave around my utility bill and bypass those checkpoints. I think to that point, the problem was not so much over-policing, because we did need the police to protect us from the potential threats, but bad police tactics that could have been done a lot better to show that they were here to protect our community. Because, yeah, marches do need to be protected by cars driving by behind them to protect their flanks from car attacks. But that can probably be done by civilian vehicles and not by Bearcats. Riot police, while some sure need to face the crowds and see what's going on, the line should probably face away. Speaking of Bearcats, having the gunner in his turret was just absolutely ridiculous on Water Street. And that whole kind of brutal arrest definitely could have gone better, even if it had to happen, without bursting out of the riot line and tackling a bunch of people, without bringing in guys with an assault weapon. But the Green Hats have my video on that, and that's up to them now. To answer a couple specific concerns, I think I heard some of the people in the community mention. I spoke to the guy manning the barricade all weekend on 4th Street a few minutes before that arrest. The reason they had that riot line set up, also that guy became real friendly with me after I took his badge number after he didn't let me in the previous day. But they had that riot line set up in the first place so that they could protect the exit of Susan Bro, which I think is probably one of their most important priorities this weekend. In terms of the chopper, yeah, I definitely feel that it triggered all the bad memories of last year in me that I think it did for everyone else. But I also remember that chopper last year chasing down James Alex Fields into Belmont before the ground police got him. And in terms of property damage, I hear the concerns there, but as someone who lives downtown, when that property damage is a Molotov cocktail coming through my window because the Nazis up in Prince William County have my address from the FOIAs I've filed against them, I definitely appreciate the police protection against that. So to wrap up, this week as I put away the shotgun I bought last year after Nazis calling for my extermination surrounded all of the exits to my building. I'd like to thank you guys, council, and all the community leaders who helped de-escalate and keep us safe this weekend. I'd like to thank Mike Murphy and even the police, at least the good ones that didn't brutalize the community. Thanks.
I'm Veronica Hanani Fitzhugh. I exist in the stolen land called Charlottesville, Virginia. So here we go. I have 2 posts that I wrote, and I want to share them. They're short. The first one has a sexual assault and police brutality trigger warning on it. So please, if you need to take care of yourselves, please do so. Where are my friends? My friend thought this over and over as the cops beat then sexually violated him yesterday. I wrote this in the middle of the night, so I'm talking about Sunday. As I was trying to be a comfort, I wanted to tell him he was not alone. I stopped because I realized if I have to tell someone they are not alone, they were alone. He was alone because no one would cross the barrier to be with him. Although I have no inkling of the pain he felt, brutalized and alone, I do know the intense loneliness of putting my own body on the line. Sunday, I was confronted a white supremacist and rapist, and instead of someone amplifying my struggle against him, I was surrounded by cops and people singing spirituals. No one asked me what I needed. No one joined my fight. I was alone. My friend asked that we teach each other how to cross the line barrier to save each other. I asked another friend, how do we do this? One way rich people stay rich is not to give away their money. One way people maintain their arrestability is not to be arrested. How do I ask people to give up their respectability and sense of security to do the right thing instead of the easier, most convenient thing? He told me, you don't ask, you tell. So I will tell you. If you see someone attacking someone and yelling does not stop them, you must move to another more effective tactic. Learn how to de-arrest people, not try to de-escalate them. Take self and community defense. Train up. This invitation is not just for crisis times, but for every day, because as the mayor said, these stories I've shared with you are not the exception, but the norm for how marginalized people are treated every damn day. Second piece. Dear cis white guy taking pictures of the oppression on Market Street. This was August 10th. As we watched a couple hundred police locked out of the library with riot shields, you mentioned you hoped it would be this boring for the rest of the weekend. Watching a massive infestation of armed white supremacy and state power take over my town does not bore me. I told you I found it triggering and abusive. You asked, as much as Nazis? I told you they were the same. You told me I was just being difficult. You don't know me. I've had cops protect KKK, white nationalists, alt-righters, and armed flaggers from me. I was arrested in the middle of the night by a dozen police officers for allegedly rattling the chair of a racist murderer in this community. I watched cops escort and allow an armed-to-the-teeth flagger to ride in a police car with all of his weapons in the back seat with him less than 24 hours after Heather Heyer's death. I've had cops humiliate me and physically abuse me repeatedly. When I chant that the KKK cops and the Klan go hand in hand, it's not just a good rhyme, it is my life. So I laugh at your microaggression and dismissal and tell you again, when I am being difficult, you'll know it. Fuck the police and you. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Tansey. I live in so-called Charlottesville. I want to be clear that I'm not drawing a direct correlation between police violence and terrorization of communities of color and the police violence we experienced not just this summer, but last summer. But I want to say that they are connected because the police began as slave When we decided that we wanted to take down, when a young black woman initiated the movement to take down our Confederate statues that were not put up during Confederate times, but during Jim Crow times, it brought the Nazis to our town. And we told y'all over and over, I'm going to look at the council members who were there that summer. We told y'all what was coming. We told y'all who was coming. We told y'all what they wanted to do to us and our city. And the police response? To stand down. Why? Because the police protect Nazis, because the police protect fascists, because they are born of that legacy. This summer, the Nazis weren't coming, y'all. And if they were, it was in a small, discombobulated band. And police response? What did we get? We got a police state. We got the 5th largest mobilization of police and law enforcement officers in the history of this Commonwealth. Who were they there to police? They were not there to police the Nazis. They were there to police the people who stood up and said, we will not stand for this shit. Because a threat to white supremacy, a threat to fascism is a threat to this state. And police officers are just the security guards of the state. They don't protect us. It was clear. It was clear who they were here to police because the Nazis were not with us. So let's just be honest. Let's just be honest about who they were here for. They were here for us, y'all. They were here for the anti-fascists who were willing to be in those streets toe-to-toe with them. You can't lie to us. We've seen it. We've lived it. But we were ready for it. And we will continue to be ready for it. And we will continue to train up and be ready for it. Because who keeps us safe?
Andy Orban, resident of Charlottesville. I don't have a whole lot to say. I wanted to thank the people that did show up this weekend, who made downtown be the space that was for our community, despite the rows of riot police. On the one hand, it was good that we had the police to protect the marchers. At times it was aggressive. At times it felt like they were protecting the road. So, but I just have such great appreciation. Lisa Woolfolk, Dr. Bellamy, Don Gathers, the people that were there as the faces and the leaders of the community. And Heather, I saw that you were downtown as well, and I appreciate that you made the effort to be down there. And Nikaya, Ms. Walker, was great to see you over the weekend. So I just want to just appreciate the community and the solidarity that we all had to, keep our town ours. Thank you.
I'd like to just make a comment, if I may, because it is getting late. And number one, I think it's important for all of us to know that there were many, many activities going on this weekend, and many different groups of people trying to remember and commemorate this weekend in their own way. And I was with 800 people at Mount Zion Church commemorating this weekend. I wasn't in the same spot as Councilors Bellamy and Hill, but that doesn't mean I wasn't just as committed and just as in love with this community as you are. And when everyone begins to say things like, well, if you don't want people, yelling at you, then you've got to engage with them. The minute I engage with you, I am shouted down or I'm abused. So, you can't have it both ways. I am trying to articulate where I was and that there are a lot of other people in Charlottesville that express themselves differently than you did, and their views are just as valid. And I was with them. So I hope we can respect those views as well. And now, second, in terms of what was the credible threat, well, a year ago, I was in the Situation Room with Mr. Bellamy, and we were told there was no credible threat in terms of it matching the high bar required of the state police and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And yes, we did have that incredible assault last year. This year, the state and local police, both at the city and regional level, did become a unified command. For the very reason to make sure that we were not victims of the alt-right assault again. And the other intelligence that I was told about was that the bigger fear this year was what they call the lone wolf, the sniper, the bomber. I am from Boston. I still have friends who were at the Boston Marathon when those bombs went off, planted by two brothers. Those bags were not checked, and those bombs were in bags. And talk to people that have no legs anymore. There was a big concern that something like that could happen in Charlottesville. That's why there were no parked cars allowed. They could put things in them, dirty bombs, shrapnel. So we were on high alert because this was a high target weekend for a high target community. So I just please want to say that that was what we were told. Now, what else would, now tonight what we've all been hearing is that we've got to recalibrate. We've got to look at, we probably very much did go overboard with some of the show of force. And we're going to get the reports, the after-action reports from the fire, emergency, as well as police. And we will do that hard work of making sure that we calibrate, that we adjust, because we cannot over-police, we cannot over-militarize. Just as much as we could not afford to have the horror of last year replay again. So that was the motivator. That was the motivator for what we saw this weekend.
I came up here to, I am a Charlottesville City resident, and I stood up here. I can't even repeat everything that was already said here this evening, because I agree with each and every one of you. What Miss Gloria said, she took the words out of my mouth, because last night I sat and watched Frontline. Nakaya, what you started out with, Tanisha, she stood up here. She was one of the first people that spoke. And for her to go from Hardy Drive to here, and there's 3 cop cars, something is seriously broken. And there's broken promises. You just eloquently said, our new chief, she let the people down. She let the black and brown people, the neighborhoods down. Where were the police that were supposed to be here? But more importantly, there isn't enough time. I came up here to say I'm so tired of people blaming Black Lives things to celebrate this weekend as a community, because the community came together, and yes, the community does protect each other. Miss Brenda, I don't know if you're still out here, but congregate, oh my gosh, we went from the Haven to the Temple to the Presbyterian Church to the streets to Washington Park to UVA to mourn, to come together, and a lot of that wasn't recognized. What if you look on the feed, because of 29 News, with the letter from our governor and Charlottesville putting us on, an emergency state, that if you look at all the feed, it's so disgusting, and they just want to, they're more concerned about protecting these fucking statues than really embracing a community that wants wonderful, positive things to turn out. So, Nakai, I know you're going to look around, you're not going to, but what you said, and I'm going to, I don't know your name, but how you turned your words around, you're right. You are absolutely, positively right. Because Heather, our neighborhood, you're my neighbor. You're my neighbor. North downtown, we live in a beautiful little, positive little world, don't we? It's very well protective. I can't tell you how many of our neighbors were turning around telling me how petrified they were. Seriously? Please, wrap your head around that. Petrified. I use that word again. Petrified. Of what? Of what? And I'm going to stay quiet because the next thing coming out of my mouth will not be ladylike, and I'm done. But thank you all, and thank you all.
Good evening. I just wanted to take a quick second to say, Nakaya, Heather, Wes, thank you so very much. Kathy, thank you for whatever it is that you felt that you did. It's not, no, that's not, I apologize. That didn't come out the way that I meant it. Kathy, I appreciate what you, I'm trying to tell you, I appreciate your efforts. Whether anyone saw you anywhere or not, I appreciate whatever it was that you did. That's what I'm saying to you. And I mean that sincerely. Now, if you don't take it that way, there's nothing else I can do. But I mean that sincerely from the heart. I just want to thank each and every one of you who did something in your own special way. Thank you, Mike Murphy, for your efforts and your leadership through this past weekend. Thank you to the community for coming out and being supportive and standing up. Thank you to the activists. And Kathy, again, I will apologize to you standing here. That is not the way that I meant it, the way that it came out. And again, it's on you if you accept it or not. That's on you. But I appreciate all the efforts of everyone who stepped up, who stood up, and who stood together. And also to the efforts of those police officers who did what was called upon them to be done, those who did the work of the badge, those who were willing to listen to us and to engage with us. I appreciate their efforts as well. Thank you.
We want to thank everybody for coming. I apologize for standing. My back hurts. But we are going to now move into a resolution to end the local state of emergency. Mayor Walker, do you guys want to read it? Do you want me to read it? Yeah, we're still in it until we actually close it. So, whereas on August 8, 2018, the city's Director of Emergency Management, with the consent of this City Council, declared a local state of emergency to exist within the city of Charlottesville as a result of potentially violent conditions anticipated in connection with the anniversary of the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, which resulted in large-scale civil disorder and rioting in downtown Charlottesville. And whereas This council hereby finds that the threat of violence anticipated for August 10th through 12th, 2018 has dissipated, and all necessary emergency actions have been taken in accordance with the Charlottesville UVA Albemarle Regional Emergency Operations Plan. Now therefore be it resolved that the local state of emergency declared by the city's Director of Emergency Management on August 8th, 2018 is hereby ended.
Vote. Oh, aye. No. All right, thank you. Do you want to close? Do you want to?
I'd just like to say thank you all for coming. We definitely did. And again, I apologize for staying in. I do think it's important to say your point in regards to communication is something that we have to improve on, and it's something that we will improve on. I think from my vantage point and what I was originally thinking, how the weekend went, and then hearing many of your perspectives and viewpoints of how it went definitely is enlightening. But that tells me that we were not communicating the plans or what was going on in the best way that we should have to you all. But I do think that there's room for improvement, and we will make that improvement. I'm very proud of this community. I will say that. Some will disagree and some may not. But I'm very proud of all of us in whatever roles we played because we got through it. And most importantly, we got through it together. And that means a lot to me. So I appreciate y'all, and we're going to get better from here. So let's continue to do what Ms. Groom said. You, everybody else in here, and let's do what Ms. Groom said. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Wes. You said all. Thank you very much, everyone.